Red warning lights pulsed across the control room like a heartbeat of panic. Dozens of engineers shouted over one another, their voices overlapping in a rising wave of chaos. Digital screens blinked furiously with error codes, while holographic schematics of a massive power reactor flickered unstable patterns. The system was failing, and no one could stop it. Asterisk Emergency Protocol Alpha initiated. One tech shouted, typing commands furiously. Nothing responded. Asterisk Reactor core temperature rising 6% above threshold. Another voice yelled, sweat pouring down his forehead. Asterisk the lead engineer. Dr. Kareem slammed his fist onto the control console. Shut it all down. Reset the control logic. Asterisk we already tried. It's locked us out. A younger engineer shouted. Nearly in tears, the room was filled with tension so thick it felt like the air was choking them. Asterisk outside the massive underground facility, the fate of a small city depended on what happened in the next 10 minutes. One miscalculation, one failed override and the reactor could go critical. Evacuation sirens began to howl through the complex. Asterisk. Dr. Kareem ripped off his headset, rage and fear mixing on his face. We've tried every algorithm, every backup path. The core systems are corrupted. We're out of options. Asterisk the team fell into a deadly silence. The digital countdown to containment failure glowed in red. 0 hours, 7 minutes and 42 seconds. 0 hours, 7 minutes and 41 seconds. Asterisk no one noticed the man standing quietly in the far corner of the room. Dusty boots, simple uniform, calm eyes. Watching everything, saying nothing. Asterisk while the experts panicked, he simply observed, waiting. The control room buzzed with panic. Alarms shrieking and countdown ticking mercilessly. Yet in the far corner, untouched by the storm, the quiet man stood motionless. His uniform wasn't military issue anymore, faded with age and stripped of insignias. But his posture spoke volumes. Back straight, eyes sharp, jaw set with silent focus. Asterisk most had forgotten he was even there. Just another maintenance worker, maybe security. No one had spoken to him since the crisis began. After all, this was a job for engineers, for code breakers and scientists. Not old soldiers, but Colonel Harris hadn't forgotten. Amid the chaos, he caught a glimpse of the man's face and his breath hitched. Wait, he muttered, stepping forward, eyes narrowing. Is that Captain Rafik? Asterisk. A few turned to look. The name hung heavy in the air. Asterisk, Captain Rafik, the war legend. The combat tech officer who once disarmed an enemy drone mid-air by rerouting its GPS in real time during a blackout, the same man who disappeared from public eye a decade ago. Walking away from medals and headlines, never seeking applause. Asterisk, what's he doing here? Whispered a young analyst. I thought he retired. Asterisk Rafik said nothing. He simply walked forward, slow, deliberate steps toward the reactor control panel. Engineers instinctively moved aside, unsure why. Asterisk, he scanned the console calmly, fingers brushing lightly across the wires exposed beneath. He didn't need the manuals or the help desk. He'd seen systems like this under fire, in deserts, in bunkers, when lives hung in the balance. Asterisk, no theatrics. No speeches. Just purpose. Asterisk and then, quietly without asking, he reached into the heart of the failing system and began to rewire the impossible. Asterisk. Captain Rafik knelt beside the main control console, pulling back a panel that no one had dared. To touch. Beneath it was a dense forest of wires, blinking circuits, and processors overheating under pressure. The engineers watched, frozen. They had already run every simulation, tried every failsafe, and the system had rejected them all. But Rafik wasn't typing commands, he was bypassing them. Asterisk, he pulled a tool roll from his bag, neatly unwrapping it on the floor like a surgeon prepping for an operation. With a calm hand, he selected a wire cutter and began tracing connections. His eyes scanned the patterns as if reading a language no one else understood. Asterisk, you're going to short the system, an engineer warned, panic flaring in his voice. That board controls the quantum relays. Asterisk, Rafik didn't look up. It's not the board, it's the root kernel. It's trapped in a feedback loop. Asterisk, how do you even know that? Asterisk, I wrote systems like this during field deployments, different hardware, same flaws. Asterisk, he clipped a blue wire, isolated a circuit, then stripped to microcables and twisted them into a bypass. Sparks shot from the panel, lighting his face for a split second, but he didn't flinch. Instead, he reached deeper. connecting an override chip he'd been carrying in his own jacket. Asterisk on the screens, something changed. A flicker, then a shift. Asterisk wait, look, someone cried out. Asterisk the mainframe's critical core display began recalibrating. Power loads redistributed. The error messages started vanishing one by one. Asterisk Rafik tapped a final command into the manual interface and flipped the emergency switch that had been locked for the past 6 minutes. Asterisk, the alarms cut off mid. The countdown stopped. Green lights returned. A calm hum filled the room where chaos once reigned. Silence fell. He had done it. Asterisk for a few long seconds. The room stood frozen in disbelief. Asterisk, the shift from red to green across the control panels was like a dream. Engineers blinked at the screens, not trusting their eyes. Status logs scrolled in calm blue fonts, showing stable readings. The nuclear core temperature was falling steadily. Power distribution had rebalanced. The facility was no longer on the brink of collapse. Asterisk someone finally spoke, barely above a whisper. Is it over? Asterisk Rafik stood slowly, dust on his knees, face marked with sweat and concentration, but not a hint of pride. He didn't need it. The job was done. Asterisk Dr. Kareem stared at him, completely stunned. His voice cracked. How? How did you know what to do? Asterisk Rafik shrugged lightly. Systems like this are designed by people who never plan for real chaos. I've seen chaos. That helps. Asterisk a younger engineer stepped forward, eyes wide with awe. Sir, you just did what our entire division failed to do in 2 days. Asterisk the colonel, who had been standing motionless, walked over and stopped directly in front of Rafik. His eyes held a storm of emotion, pride, regret, respect. He raised his hand in a sharp salute. Asterisk, Captain Rafik, you saved this facility. You saved everyone here. Asterisk Rafik didn't salute back. He just nodded slightly, his expression unreadable. Asterisk others followed. Engineers who once ignored him were now applauding quietly, some clapping, some just watching in reverence. For a man who hadn't spoken more than a few words, his actions had echoed louder than any speech. Asterisk, no one had trained for this situation. No AI had predicted this solution. But Rafik, with nothing but his instinct, experience, and calm mind, had stopped a disaster in its tracks. He said nothing more. He didn't need to. Asterisk, the applause faded as quickly as it had begun. Captain Rafik didn't wait for praise or interviews. As the room began to fill with the relieved voices of engineers and officials rechecking data and restarting systems, he quietly gathered his tools, wrapped them neatly back into the worn cloth and stood up. Asterisk, no one noticed at first when he turned away. The cameras didn't follow him. The spotlight never landed on his face, and that was just how he preferred it. Asterisk, he walked slowly toward the door at the far end of the control room, his boots echoing softly against the metal floor. Behind him, conversations buzzed with awe. He rewired the core manually. We were less than 2 minutes from meltdown. He knew exactly where the flaw was, but none of it reached him. Asterisk outside the room. The corridor stretched long and empty, lit by cold fluorescent lights. No chaos here, no alarms. Just silence. The kind of silence only a soldier could feel at home in. Asterisk Rafik paused at the exit. A young technician rushed after him, tablet in hand. Sir, Captain, they want to interview you. The media's already asking. Asterisk he stopped, turned halfway, and said quietly, let them talk. I've said what I needed to. But sir, we owe you. He raised a hand gently. Not to silence, not to scold. Just to say, enough. Asterisk and then he walked out, disappearing into the brightness beyond the glass doors. Asterisk inside. They watched him go, unsure whether they had just witnessed a miracle or simply the power of experience. Courage and calm in the storm. Asterisk later, a plaque would be placed in the control room. It wouldn't name Rafik because he never gave permission. But etched at the bottom were words the engineers had agreed upon unanimously. Asterisk, when all minds failed, one heart rewired the impossible, the world. But to the mission. Asterisk.